Yes, I need to clarify some things about tongues, unknown tongue, jibberish. I call it because that of the gibber nature that it is. It has no knowledge to be interpreted, and so the Pentecostals, and I've subscribed to several others that aren't Pentecostals on my channels that I subscribe to their YouTube channel. They believe you must be saved. You're not saved until you gibberish, and they even encourage you to just start gibbering, gibber, and then it'll come out, and you'll gibber your emotion and everything out. Well, I want to go over this because I have a point that talks about this ceasing. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. And if you have to communicate to God this way, one day that's going to cease. Now, over here in chapter 12 of First Corinthians, it talks about divers kinds of tongues, and another has the interpretation of those divers kinds of tongues. So, every tongue that is speaking about, this is my other point, in the Bible has an interpreter for it. And that's why when you read this, there's divers kinds of tongues, but there's interpretations is given to another to interpret those diverse tongues. Now it goes into more detail. It says, do all speak with tongues, do all interpret. So not everyone uses tongues. And that's questions. Not everyone uses it, not everyone interprets it. And so that's another point that I have, that that not everyone will speak with different tongues, or not everyone will interpret. And so anyway, if not everyone does it, then not everyone's saved. That's my other point that I have there. If not everyone speaks in other tongues, then not everyone would be saved if you had to have this gibber to be saved. And then I have another point, that you only edify yourself when you speak in a tongue without interpreters. And even if you are speaking in a tongue, you're not prophesying, and so prophecy edifies the church. That's over here in 1 Corinthians 14. 4, it says that him that speaketh with an unknown tongue edify himself, but him that prophesieth edifieth the church. So the unknown tongue you're speaking in is not edifying the church as prophecy would. And so it's putting prophecy with the tongue interpreting and tongue speaking. And so this is the clear way of reading this, because of the fact that twice in chapter 12 it puts interpreting the diverse tongues with the tongues. And so and it doesn't add the unknown tongue till over here when it's talking about prophesying and tongues, and it says an unknown tongue. So that means that that's what this is dealing with, is a tongue, diverse tongue, and needing the interpretation of it, and someone that can speak with the tongue to give the interpretation, because of the fact that the day of Pentecost, there was all these nations there, and they that was the one of the very first biggest grandioso interpreting of tongues that went on. And so that's why this is being written about, because of the interpreting of tongues that goes on, and that the apostles could speak in different diverse tongues to be able to pull this off. So that's why this is spoken, is there was actual, this is my other point, there was actual tongue interpretation going on and speaking in tongues that was not learned. There was a miraculous speaking in languages, and it's specific languages. There was not, like you have today, people just wanting to communicate to God, and it's basically it's called groanings and stuff that that the Holy Spirit uses, but we don't use those. It's said that the Holy Spirit uses a groaning to communicate for us, but that we don't use groaning type sounds and that would have to be used here. Is that maybe groanings and interpretation of groanings would be the word to be used here if that's what people are doing, is just pleading and groaning. That would be used here in the Bible. It wouldn't be using the word tongues because of the fact that this goes down like this. So there you have my points, and it's a study. It's probably not complete. I didn't cover every verse that talks about tongues, but it's enough that I covered the gist of the points that people use to try to justify tongues, and the points that I use to debunk that tongues save. Speaking in gibber or groanings would save you.